Hey everyone, and welcome to the Balanced Bodies Blueprint. I am your host, Vinny Russo.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Erin Stansfield.
And we're shifting gears from all the conventional fitness narrative you hear on most fitness podcasts, as our main emphasis lies in preventative healthcare, adopting a holistic approach to nutrition, and challenging traditional views on various fitness topics.
Our mission with this podcast is to provide you with the information you need to achieve optimal health.
And on today's podcast, I am going to be discussing the app that I created called Balanced Bodies Intelligence. This will be a solo episode. It's not going to reach the 60 minutes. It should be shorter than that, but I want to go through all the features and explain everything to show you the true value that it brings. Now, how did this even come about? Well, my wife, Dr. Erin, she challenged me and said she thinks that AI will one day take over my career. And I was like, not a friggin' chance. There's no way. There's too much of a human element involved in coaching. So I took it upon myself, with all of the new type of AI technology that we have, to actually build out an app. So it took me a very long time. I could go into all the scenarios I had to run it through and make it learn and help it learn how to coach when faced with certain scenarios based off of certain data. And I will tell you this, it got very close. It got very close to the point of like, hey, I would make this decision, and it was making that same decision. But the reason why something like AI will never take over my career is because there is such a human element involved. There's a personal connection. And when you have that personal connection with your coach, the trust builds over time. You have this buy-in. You want to never let that person down, which adds to the accountability. There is a huge, huge human element. So I built this app not to replace coaching, at all. It's really for a certain select of people that I'll go through in a little bit. But it's not to replace coaching. And if anything, coaches can use it to help with their coaching, right? It's a way, AI is a way to support coaches and give them more time so they could spend time on their expertise, on their craft, which is that interaction with that other person, which is their client. So what is Balanced Bodies Intelligence? In simple terms, it's really a nutrition coaching system that's driven by machine learning that makes decisions based on your actual data over time. It's not this static macros where the app just basically gives you your calories and your macros and says, here you go, good luck. It looks at weight trends. It looks at your compliance. It figures out your recovery based off of, the data that you feed it. It provides you with a habit score, a movement score, and it makes adjustments to your nutrition based off of the data it's provided and how trends are going, the same way that a legitimate coach should coach. And the biggest thing, once again, that I really, really want you to understand right now, right out of the gate, is that, once again, it is not meant to replace coaching. It is meant to give people access to coaching who normally wouldn't have it. Because most people, when they diet, they don't fail from lack of really knowing what foods to eat or like the effort put forward. They fail really from lack of direction. And that overwhelmment comes on and the confusion comes on. And then that's where they start to fall off and they give up. And then sooner or later, they feel like they have to start up again. And that's where that vicious cycle happens. So this app is directed to fix that. So let's describe who it's actually for. So I would say it's for three different types of people. The first one is for people who don't need the one-on-one coaching, but they need structure and accountability. This would be perfect for them because it has that structure and it has a ton of accountability built in, and I'll go over those features a little bit later. The second type of person are people who aren't really sure if they need coaching just yet. So this is a really good introduction for them to see what coaching feels like, because you're going to have to plug in data. You're going to have to weigh your food. You're going to have to abide by certain guidelines and certain rules. You're going to have to do your measurements. You're going to have to weigh yourself. So it gets you into the flow of what you'll be doing with a real coach. And then the third type of person is for people who really want the coaching, but they just can't afford that $400 per month, $500 per month, $600 per month with a good legitimate coach, right? So this gives them a system that still makes extremely smart decisions without the full cost of a coach, right? So honestly, like, this is really what most people need in terms of like the structure and accountability. Not so much what they want though, because people love human interaction. And that's, if you find a coach that you vibe well with, man, and they got a good personality and you guys, you trust that person right off the bat, you will see extremely good results. Even if they don't really know, even if they're not as good as another coach, you might still get better results with them because you buy in more because of that trust. But now a big question comes up. And when I first put it out, this was one of the main questions that I was asked, is like, what's the difference between your app, Balanced Bodies Intelligence, and something like MyFitnessPal or a normal online macro calculator or chronometer or even Carbon, right? And the simplest way I could put it is that most of those apps are just for really tracking, like giving you a number and then track that you're hitting that number. This app coaches. So if you look at like a typical macro calculator, it's going to give you numbers one time, really, right? That's based on formulas and like an estimated activity level and whatever information it's asking you to give it on day one. And that's what you get. And that's supposed to be like your thing. But your body doesn't live on day one. Your body will change over time. You're going to get different stressors throughout the week, on different weeks. Your adherence might change because of those stressors over time. Your recovery is going to change. It's not going to be optimal on some weeks. And your progress in terms of rate of change is going to change. So static apps act like, how can I say this? They act like that first estimate is the end all be all, right? And this system treats it as, hey, this is just a starting point, and then we have to see how you respond to it, and then we go from there, right? So it gives you an initial target, and then it watches what your body actually does with that target. Did your weight trend move? Did your waist come down? How's your biofeedback holding up? How's your recovery? Did you hit all your movement? What was your compliance like? Was it high? Was it low? And that's the difference. It doesn't just give you these numbers. It tells you what those numbers mean, why we're doing it, and what to do next, right? Now, I will give some credit. Like there are some apps that do try to adapt. For example, Carbon by Lane Norton. I don't know the whole name. Carbon. I know it's Carbon. Carbon something. Carbon by Lane Norton. It's one of those that do actually adapt. The difference between Balanced Bodies Intelligent and Carbon is that Carbon only looks at scale weight. It doesn't factor in your biofeedback. It doesn't look at your overall compliance. It doesn't look at how well you were doing with your habits throughout the week. It doesn't look like if you hit your movement protocols. This app, Balanced Bodies Intelligence, does look at all that before it makes a decision. And that's the whole point. This is a coaching engine. It is not a formula. It is not a food tracker. It is not like, hey, if your weight goes down, we keep it the same. And once you stall out, we automatically cut calories. It doesn't do that. There's phases that are built in. It's an entire coaching system, right? So look, I had to teach it so many different scenarios. It took forever, right? I have this whole library of notes on all of my clients, right? And I keep them, and some I have actually lost through a couple moves, moving from New Jersey to Utah, and then just selling the home, and then moving into a rental right now while we're building our other home. Like things have been lost, and that's just me being human, right? But I've had so many different scenarios over time that I was able to run it through to get it to think the way I do, because I would run it through a scenario, I would tell it this is what I would do and why, and it would run through, and then we would practice it, and so on and so forth with a ton of different scenarios. So this is why it is not just another macro calculator. And honestly, the amount of time and effort I put into it, I'm going to push this out to be like the best thing to ever happen. So with all that being said, why don't I just talk you through sort of what happens, like what happens on day one. So when you log into the app and you sign up for it, or whatever, and you go through the onboarding, you're going to start initially with a baseline phase. It has to establish a baseline for you. So for about 11 to 7 days, depending on where you sign up, because it has to align with our weekly cadence. We're going to do any type of coaching decision on Sundays. So it depends on where you line up, and we want at least 2 Sundays before we give you legitimate coaching decisions, because we need to collect the data, right? Your daily scale weights, your food intake being logged, your biofeedback scores on a weekly basis, your measurements on a weekly basis, your movement score, your behaviors throughout the week, right? So we want all that data first. This app is not going to rush into making changes. There's going to be no reactive feeding. There's going to be no knee-jerk cuts, right? Just out of nowhere, we're just going to cut calories. There's not going to be any pretending that only 3 days of data is good enough to start to coach someone. It's establishing patterns over time. It's learning you first, right? What is your weight doing right now with the initial calories we gave you and the macros? And then how consistent are you? And is your data strong enough to even trust right now? And that really, really matters, because if the first change that the coaching decision makes is based on weak data, that next change is going to be on weak data, and so on and so forth. And that's really how people get messed up, because you're making decisions based off of BS, and that's not what you want to do. So it establishes a nice baseline, and then it moves into this weekly decision cycle. So every 7 days, it's going to review the data, and it's going to make one of 3 decisions, where we're either going to cut, which is going to reduce calories and macros. It's either going to feed, where we increase calories and macros, or it's going to hold, where everything stays the same. And that decision that it makes, it is not random. It is not based on one weigh-in. It is literally pulling from rolling trends and from recent adherence to make an intelligent decision. So when we look at rate of loss, we're looking at this week compared to last week, right? But that is just like one metric. It's also looking at all of the other trends on the previous weeks, because everything is stored into history. So all of that data still gives the coaching decision its data. I just kind of rambled there because I'm trying to think of the right word to say. It uses, even 2 months ago, it'll still take those trends, and those trends are still being considered. That's the word I'm looking for. Still being considered for the decision 2 months later, because it's looking at the trends over time. Now, you might sit there and be like, well, why are we doing weekly check-ins? Why can't we do check-ins a little bit faster? I know some coaches out there do 2 check-ins per week. And if you pay for more, you could do 3 check-ins a week. Your body needs time to respond. And coaches who do that, honestly, are wasting their fucking time, and you shouldn't be a coach. Having personal touches and touch points with clients multiple times per week, that should just be a part of your normal coaching. You shouldn't have a client pay more to fucking talk to you, but you need data you need time, right? And time to collect that data in order to make an intelligent decision, right? So yes, a lot of people, they want decisions in real time because they feel pretty anxious. But anxious doesn't mean accurate, right? If you change calories every other day, that's not coaching. You're just overcorrecting shit. You're not allowing your body to acclimate, and you're making decisions based off of nonsense, right? So this whole system that I built and the way I coach is built to eliminate emotional, impulsive decision making, right? So as an individual, I want you to keep that in mind, because you'll see that this principle, right, will show up everywhere with legitimate coaching. It's collecting data, seeing how things are moving over time. Okay, keep that in mind. So what happens when you plateau? Like, is there any type of smart decision making built into this app? And yes, there fucking is. And you know that I had to put that in there, right? So you just don't cut calories every time you plateau, and that's not what happens with this application. And honestly, that's where a lot of people mess up. They think, oh, my weight's stagnant for a week, so I got to make a cut to calories. No, a plateau is not automatically a sign that you need less food, right? And to be honest with you, if coaches do that, that's fucking lazy coaching, and you shouldn't be a coach. But this is also where coaching comes in, and it's not just tracking. So before the system makes any call, it looks at like everything with full context. So it'll take into account how long you're actually in this dieting phase for, because there are phases. Like I said, I'll go through that a little bit later. It's looking at how low are your calories already, right? What's your overall compliance been, and how's it been for the last few weeks? What are your recovery signals looking like your sleep, your stress, your energy? How's your hunger? Is the data that you're providing me strong enough to even trust, or are you missing days? Are you missing check-ins on a week-to-week basis? Because if someone's been dieting really hard for a long time and calories are already low and hunger is really high, energy is down, stress is up, another cut will just be the dumbest possible move you can make, right? So when you look at it, when you reach a plateau, eat less is not always the best decision. Eat more might be that best decision, and that might surprise you because it sounds counterintuitive. But that's where people start to realize that this is doing something far more advanced than any type of typical dieting app that you have. Like, I really hope some what do they call those angels, those that donate? I don't even know. I hope one of those hear this and is like, this app is insane. Let me try it out, so they could be like, yo, this app needs to be freaking everywhere. But anyway, sorry, I digress. One of the most valuable parts of coaching is knowing when not to keep cutting. And a lot of people can be aggressive and want to be aggressive and feel like they need to keep cutting. But a few really good coaches know that aggression is not intelligent, right? And this system already is built like that. Okay, so let's go into these phases so I can explain a little bit more what I mean. So one of the biggest lies people believe in nutrition is that they should just keep dieting until they get where they want, right? But your body doesn't work like that. You can't force a deficit forever and expect to have great outcomes forever, right? My biggest thing that I tell people is you should spend more time out of a dieting phase than you do in one when you look at the full year in a whole, right? So this app, it doesn't treat nutrition as just like one endless phase. It will manage a few different situations. So staying in a deficit when fat loss is productive is what it will do, right? It might use a maintenance break when recovery needs are down, right? When your recovery is down and need a little short reset, a maintenance break comes in for about a week to 2 weeks. Or maybe you get moved into a control feed where calories are starting to be rebuilt gradually. Or maybe we just hold someone at maintenance for a while just to stabilize things, right? And once again, this is the massive difference from this app compared to other apps where they'll just tell you to keep dieting, right? Dieting does have a lifespan. And at first, the deficit, yeah, it could work great. Then over time, metabolic adaptation happens. Things get harder. Hunger goes up, energy will go down, recovery gets worse and worse and worse over time, and your body gets more and more stubborn to release body fat. And then you have that cost of staying in a deficit starting to outweigh the benefit, right? So that's where this app really separates itself even from human coaching, because there's human coaches that don't run people through phases. They just run through a constant diet deficit the entire time. So when we look at these weekly decisions, the weekly decision and the bigger phase, whether you're in like a maintenance phase or maybe we're in a maintenance break or you're going into that control feed, they're not the same thing, right? A weekly decision can be to cut, feed, or hold, but the phase will determine the purpose behind those decisions. And the app will know what phase it's actually in. So those weekly decisions will change based off of, one, your data, but also what phase it's in. So are we losing? Are we recovering? Are we stabilizing? Are we rebuilding food back up intelligently? It's going to take all of those things into account. So instead of trapping someone in this eat less forever, the app knows when to push, it knows when to pause, it knows when to rebuild, and it knows when to diet down. And that's one of the biggest value pieces in this whole entire app. Now, when we look at the data that we provided, it's not just like your scale weight and it's not just your food intake. It's also how you feel. So your body can literally still be losing weight while your recovery is being wrecked. And if a system only looks at scale movement, something like carbon, it can accidentally reward outcomes that are being impossible to sustain, because you could be losing weight, but if you feel like dog shit and your recovery is hindered, it's only going to set you up for disaster in the future. So something has to trigger, something has to flag that, and you have to be aware of that. And this app does that by looking at these core biofeedback signals. We're looking at recovery, we're looking at sleep, looking at stress, energy, and your hunger, and you're rating those on a week-to-week basis. You can rate them on a day-to-day basis if you really want and give the app even more data. I would say do it on a week-to-week basis. And then it compiles them into this readiness score, right? So when you look at this readiness score, you have to take into account like something like one bad night of sleep is not going to really mess with your readiness score. But if you have 2 weeks of worsening sleep and your stress is getting higher and your energy is getting lower and your hunger is rising, that does mean something, right? That means something, and your readiness score will start to reflect that. And this system, the way it is, asking questions, not just like, are you lighter, but how are you handling the process, is the differentiation factor, right? So if someone's getting lighter but feels absolutely terrible, the system will probably hold you, or honestly might even feed you, even though your scale's dropping, because the cost of progress matters just as much, right? Just because you're getting to where you want to on a scale weight perspective doesn't mean that you should be doing that right there in that moment. And that is what real coaching is, okay? So it's literally protecting you from confusing like the suffering with dieting with success with dieting. A lot of people think they need to suffer when they diet. No, you should feel hungry at times. Of course, if you're in a deficit, you shouldn't have to suffer unless you are, a couple weeks out of a bodybuilding competition, you have to step on stage and you are fucking behind, then there's going to be suffering. But that's a different population here, right? That's a different animal. Yeah, the main thing with this is like, we're not just going to go base everything off your scale weight. We're going to look at how you're feeling, and we're going to look at what your readiness is for. Because if you're not ready for another cut, why are we going to cut food? Why are we going to do that and just make you suffer a little bit more? So it's a big part in what goes into the coaching decision. And compliance also goes into the coaching decisions. Like, what if you're not following the plan? What happens then? Right? What if you're just like plugging in a scale weight here and there? You're not really logging in your intake because you're not really following. What does the app do? Well, the app doesn't punish you for it. It's not going to like scold you or anything like that. It literally just says like, hey, I work good with a ton of data. You're not giving me any data, so we're going to hold until you actually start complying. Right? So let's just think about it. If you were assigned like 2,300 calories and you only followed it here and there, and you honestly reflect it, and you said that you only followed it here and there with like your habit score and stuff like that, and you're logging in weights and all that stuff, it's going to tell you that, hey, we didn't execute the plan, so I'm not changing until you start doing that. So instead of overreacting, the app will actually get more conservative, right? It's going to hold on cutting. It's going to hold on this, even if we're trending backwards. It's like, yeah, we're trending backwards because you're not following the plan. And the app notices that because of the way you log stuff. So the more honest you are with how you are being, remember, it's not a human that's judging you. All right. It's a machine that is learning your body over time. The more honest you are with it, the better decisions it can actually make for you. So your compliance is another factor that gets put in to whether the coach makes a decision or not. Now, what about like pictures and stuff? Can the app look at pictures and see a difference? I wish it could. It does not. But what's great is that there is a feature in there where we do side-by-sides. So you are going to have on your onboarding, you have to submit an initial front and back photo. So you're going to do that. And then every time you upload a new photo, it will give you a side-by-side in that photo section of your initial photo to where you currently are. So you could see that progress over time. You have all of your photos will be in a database below where you could always go back, click, and check the photo from the week before if you want to. But you will always have a side-by-side from the start to where you currently are to show you your progress over time, because that means more than just the scale weight. If you're losing a ton of scale weight, but you're losing fat and muscle, you probably won't look that much different. You might just look like a smaller version of you at that body composition. So we want you to be able to see that progress as well. So we have that feature in there for you. In terms of features, because I don't really have like a script I'm going off of, I'm trying to go through it right now with the app on my phone. But in terms of features, let's talk about like your dashboard. So dashboard took me it took me a long time to get it down. And initially I put a ton of things on there and it just looked way too overwhelming. There's too much shit. I was like, I want the dashboard to be like a control center. Now I'm like, nah, that's too much. Let's scale it back. So I scaled it back a ton, right? I scaled it back a ton. So now like you could just see the important things. And if you want to see more data initially, like right when you go in, you could click on it and it brings you and tells you all of that information that I initially had on there. So when you look on there, right, it's showing you the most important signals in just like one place. So you got your current coaching decision, whether that's cut, feed, or hold, with the explanation of why it's doing what you're doing. It has your habit score on there to show you how well you're doing for the week. It has your movement score on there telling you how well you're doing your movement for the week. It has your intake versus your targets, so what you have logged in for the day so far. It shows your weight trends in terms of like a line chart, so you can see your progress really quick at a glance. And it also gives you your readiness score on there, right? So it could show you like what you were previously last week and where your readiness was. So the way that I like to frame it is it's a daily reality check on like what you're doing. Now, one of the things that I love about this and that I added, because I was like, how do we get people like into this without like having some type of competition where like all the users are on it and they're competing against each other? Because I didn't want to do that. I felt that was very cheesy. And honestly, you get some people that will lie about their stuff and that score gets thrown off. So I wanted you to compete with yourself. So I added a streak tracking. So it's tracking basically your week-to-week check-ins. Are you checking in on a week-to-week basis? And if you are, how many weeks have you been checking in? So it shows that. It shows your logging checks. So if you go on to your habit tracker, it'll show you, that you have a 3-day streak going because you logged in 3 days in a row, right? So I have these streaks in there to kind of gamify it for you. But it sounds like, oh, well, that's not big of a deal, but it's huge because it's an accountability anchor. And most people just really need that accountability. And this is another way that the app offers accountability. I mentioned the habit tracker. This is basically the same idea, like behaviors drive results, right? So this is what the habit tracker is built around. Results aren't just going to come from you hitting macro targets. They come from behaviors that support hitting those macro targets. So the habit tracker lets you track your daily stuff on a day-to-day basis. You just check it off. And what's cool is that the habit donut will start to fill up the more habits that you do. So once again, there's like this gamifying factor to it. You also have weekly habits. So at the end of the week, you're going to check them off and see how well you did. And there's a progress bar that fills up. And then there's monthly habits too. And with that, once again, a progress bar. And you click them off, it'll fill up. And you want everything to be green. The more green you have on there, the better, right? That means that you are hitting the minimums, at least the minimums of what you should be doing to see some really good results. You can change them too. So it's completely customizable. So I have my ones that I put in there usually for my clients. I took some out as well because there's specific ones that you put in for specific individuals, but the foundations are there, right? But you could create your own, you can edit the ones I have in there, you could delete the habits if you don't like it, and then you mark them off. And once again, as you mark them off, you'll get tracking streaks. And like I said, you'll see completion percentages. So it turns like these vague intentions into something that's measurable, right? And I feel like that matters a lot because accountability usually breaks down long before motivation does. And it's kind of, we know that motivation doesn't last, which is kind of sad because if accountability is falling before that, that's rough, right? And people will sit there and say, oh, well, I need more motivation. And honestly, no, most of the time you just need that little extra accountability because you are motivated to do something. That's why you're doing it in the first place. All right. Let's go into another feature, which is the biggest thing. I actually created its own app off of this, which is the nutrition plan and its food optimizer. So like I said, this is probably the coolest thing that I built inside this app. And it took me forever. I had to work with someone to actually like dial it in and run through like, not different scenarios, but different runs through it. So it would go through one pass, then it would go through another and through another to make sure that we're getting as close as possible. Let me explain it. So this food optimization button, it solves probably one of the biggest day-to-day problems people have. And it's, you know what food you want to eat and that you have to eat, but you just don't know how much of the food you should be eating to hit your macro targets. So in this nutrition page, I let you build out your own plan. You can build it out with the numbers that you want. You could, listen, this is like a MyFitnessPal, right? But you get to put the amounts in. You look up the food items. There's over 350 food items in there already, but you can add your own. We don't have a scanner, barcode scanner. That was like crazy. I couldn't figure that out, so I wasn't even going to try to do that. But you can just look at the nutrition label and just put it in that way. So you could add any food that you want, right? And then what this does is if you don't want to figure out the amounts, you just put your meals in, the food items per meal, and you just click the optimize, and it gives you the portions of those food items per meal to hit your macro targets, and it gets as close as possible. Now, if you put food items in there that will make it nearly impossible to get close, because let's just say you used all fatty proteins, right? So it's like, all right, we're prioritizing protein and calories first, and we'll worry about carbs and fats later. When it prioritizes the protein to hit that number, your fats might be through the roof because you chose all fatty proteins. So there will be a coaching note saying, hey, you chose salmon and steak, really fatty proteins. Let's try to swap those for lean proteins. And you'll have that coaching note in there. But overall, I mean, through the amount of runs that we ran through it, it gets close on all types of crazy concoctions of meal, like Baskin Robbins, right? Like different flavors, right? Like how many different flavors can you mix? How many different food items can you put in meals and see how close it could get? So that was probably one of the coolest things. And we added like a smart optimized feature to it, because let's just say you eat the same breakfast every day and you know what that is and you really enjoy it. You put that in there. And then the other meals, you just, I don't feel like figuring out the portion sizes. So you fill that out. And then the other ones, you just put the meal items in, the food items. You click the optimize and it doesn't mess with that first meal. It just optimizes the rest based off what is left. So really, really cool feature. I want a lot of people to try it out and test it out and see how well it works for them. Because yeah, I don't think this is repeatable in terms of like building something better than what was built there. And also on this nutrition page, we have something called flex days. So you can activate a flex day. Let's say you have a birthday party or a wedding, or you have, I don't know, an event coming up, and you're going to be off. Well, you click that flex day on, and it sort of gives you a game plan on what to do before the event. Right? It's like, all right, well, look, here's going to be X amount of your calories that we're going to try to eat. We're mainly going to focus on like the protein aspect of it and making sure that we prioritize that protein. Carbs and fats are going to be a little bit lower, giving you some wiggle room for later for that flex window. So yeah, we're going to focus on trying to hit 40% of your calories now and leave like 60% of your calories for later when you have some time. And that's sort of what it does. So when you do that, the app also takes that into account. So when you click that on, that flex day, the app will take that into account as that being like a little bit of an off day. And you could still track, and if you don't track, it's okay. But once again, this app is about real coaching. So it's not going to push you to this unsustainable level where you cannot have these days. No, you're supposed to have these days. Honestly, the best results will probably come from you having at least one flex day per week. It doesn't allow more than 2 though, right? Because if you start doing 3 or 4 flex days per week, then your adherence is really off and you're not giving the right amount of data needed for the app to actually make intelligent coaching decisions. So we capped it at 2 days per week at a maximum, but like I would say use it at least once a week. Have a date night. Like if you have a spouse, go have a date night and put your flex day on, and you know that you could go into it guilt-free because you're planning for it. Now there's another feature, it's the intake page. This is like if you don't want to build your meals inside the app because you're very comfortable with your own tracking app, perfectly fine. Keep using that. You don't have to use the nutrition page for that. But what I need you to do then is then plug in the macros and calories that you did hit. And it's really just the macros because the calories are automatically calculated. So if you just put your macros in, the calories add up, right? So if you use something like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or just like another tracker, cool. Place those macro totals at the end of the day into your Balanced Bodies Intelligence and just click save, and it'll save the intake for the day. I don't want to force everyone into like use my stuff, right? I mean, it's cool to keep everything under one umbrella, but if you are really comfortable with tracking with a different app, then you just keep doing that because you being comfortable is more important for overall adherence. What's next? The movement score. So this is, I track movement differently than most apps. I think, most people think that movement means workouts and cardio, and I think that's a huge mistake. So I break this movement score into 3 different buckets, which all play a different role, right? So we got daily steps or your overall NEAT, right? So you're going to have a step count to try to hit, but it's really just staying active throughout the day because your NEAT has the biggest effect on your metabolism. Then we have resistance training, and then we have intentional cardio. So why did I split it like that? Because I feel like they're not equally important, right? This app heavily prioritizes your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, your NEAT. And I did that intentionally, right? Your step count is a proxy for the NEAT. So it's one way to really determine if you are moving throughout the day. But if you think about it, like the calories that you burn through normal daily movement, like walking, standing, and doing errands, pacing, fidgeting, that type of stuff, that's really the biggest driver in your overall metabolic rate. So why not prioritize that? And that's what we did here. And then strength training is next. Put cardio last, right? So when we're looking at like the weighted score, I got like overall NEAT and steps at like 70%. Strength training is at about 20%. And then cardio, intentional cardio, is about 10%. And as you go through your week and you're checking things off, that score will add up. And then it will give you a nice score at the very end to show you where you landed. And I think that's really important. And I think prioritizing the NEAT over intentional cardio is something that most coaches and most apps wouldn't do. One other feature that we have, which is an add-on, is an Ask Your Coach feature, which is like an on-demand guidance inside the app. And what it does is, what I think is the most valuable part, is that it does answer your questions, but it will also refuse to answer questions, because I made sure, and if you know me, my content is about staying in your own lane. So this feature stays in its lane. It's built to help with your nutrition clarity and interpretation of your data that you're putting in your app. Okay. It'll answer things like, hey, well, why didn't my calories change? Or why does my weight seem to stay stagnant? Or what does my weight trend mean? Or how's my compliance being calculated? Or why did I get a hold instead of a cut? That type of stuff. How much protein should I be aiming for because it has me here, right? And what it does is it pulls your log data. And look, it's not a generic chatbot. Okay, I'm paying for this high-level AI service to actually be incorporated in there, which is why you're paying for the add-on. But it's interpreting the situation. Okay, so, and it'll give you a legitimate answer based off of the data that you provide it with inside the app. Now, things it won't answer. It won't answer medical condition, diagnosis, symptoms, medications, hormones, lab works, supplement protocols, peptides. It won't answer anything like that. Even like your injury, like you got hurt or whatever. It's not going to give you any of those answers. It'll tell you to talk to your primary care physician or reach out to a specialist or something like that. And the reason why is because, and I don't see this as a weakness, I see this as a strength of the app, because too many tools try to act like they can do everything. And this one, it's not pretending to be your doctor. It's not going to pretend that it can interpret your blood work. It's not going to diagnose any symptoms. It's not this fake AI WebMD, right? If you need to ask about those things, the chat will redirect you to go ask your licensed healthcare provider. And I think that adds a trust factor because it has boundaries, right? And it's there technically just for clarity, for education, and for context, and for reinforcement about you in particular. It's not there to diagnose, okay? So I thought that was an important thing to say because it's not an end-all be-all. It needs to stay in its lane. And honestly, I stay in my lane as a nutrition coach. So, but let's talk a little bit about the accountability that's built in. And like I said, I feel like this is a big thing. I should have talked about this before now that I think about it, but I feel like this is a big thing because most people just need accountability. And if you have apps and you disappear on those apps, what happens? Nothing. You quietly stop using it. You're paying for a service that you don't use. And over time, they're just making money off of you because you forget about it and it's not that expensive. So you just become another inactive account to them that's paying them money. Right? But that's not how my app works. I have morals and I didn't want that to be something that like, I'm not in here to get rich off of this thing. It would be fucking cool though, right? It'd be really cool if it blew up and that happened. If that did happen, I could lower the price for everybody, but there was so much time and effort in, which is why it is where it is. But anyway, this app does have a multi-layered accountability system, right? And it's actively watching how much you engage with the app, and then it will get louder as you get darker or as you go into the dark, right? Which was the goal of mine, to kind of catch when you started disengaging with it and to kind of let you know like, hey, like I see what you're doing. Don't quit on me yet. All right. So how does it work? If you go 3 days without really checking in stuff and doing anything like that, you'll get a banner that pops up on the app. Now the banner, you're probably like, why the fuck am I getting a banner on the app if I'm not logging in or checking it, right? How is that helping me? Well, some people might go in and log in and log their food, but they're not doing their scale weights or they're not doing their measurements. And this app is gonna be like, hey, I didn't get this from you for this many days. So that banner shows up, but you also get an email and it's like, yo, here's a quick check. You got some data missing. It tells you which is kind of overdue. And then there'll be a button in that email where it's like, hey, resume your plan. And it'll take you right to it. 5 days in, you get another email. And it's like, hey, listen, man, if you need something, give me a call so I could kind of help you out, you know, or reach out to me on this email so I could talk to you because I don't want you to give up right now. Then 7 days is like, all right, look, we got to talk because this stuff's still overdue. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money. And then there's like 14 days where it's like, all right, look, if you want to quit, you can quit, but we need data if you're really going to keep using this. So it kind of goes through that and you get those banners and the email simultaneously. I didn't do text messages. I actually put a feature in there where you could turn it on in your settings where if like you want to get an SMS message, you could do that because you don't really check your emails. Then it will push them to that. But it's really based off of your inactivity. And if you hit that cycle where it's like, hey, you're logging in your scale weight, but you're logging in your scale weight and you're logging in your measurements, but you're not logging in your food, it's going to say, hey, I'm still missing this data, man. So we built this intelligence behind it to really just try to help with that accountability. And then another feature that helps with your accountability is your weekly reports. You will get a weekly report whether you are checking in or not. And if you're not checking in or putting in your data or whatever, it's going to say, hey, like, here's your weekly report, but not too much to report here because you're not doing anything. But what you can do is when you do check in and you do log all your information the right way, you have these weekly reports that you could literally download and you could see on a week-to-week basis exactly what it looks like, how well you're progressing, the coaching notes, the coaching decisions, all of that stuff, your readiness score, your habit score for the week, all of that's in there. And it's very nice. It looks very visually appealing. And you can just save them and show yourself over time your progress on a week-to-week basis. Now, one thing that I am really, really big on is education. It was what I was doing while I was building my nutrition business. I was a teacher. So what I really wanted this to do is be like, hey, I need this app to sort of tell the client or the user why you're doing what you're doing, right? So it's not just going to spit out numbers. It's going to tell you, hey, here's the reason why we're holding, or here's the reason why we're feeding you. Here's the reason why we're going to maintenance weights. Here's the reason why we're going to cut calories, right? So there are going to be these explanations for the decisions. And what that does over time is it allows the individual to start to learn, hey, like, wow, like I was held here at my calories, even though I saw a little bit of stagnancy, but there wasn't too much stagnancy. So initially, like I felt like there should be a change, but there wasn't because my body's still responding. And then over time, they realize that. So then when they ever do this on their own, they know, hey, my scale weight might have been stagnant for the last 3 days, but I mean, I'm still down, further than I was the previous week by a decent amount. So I'm not stagnant. I'm just stale for 3 days. I don't need to cut calories. The key to dieting, everyone, is to diet down on as many calories as possible. If you don't have to cut calories, please do not cut calories. And then, yeah, I mean, that was like the biggest thing with me is like, let me just make sure that, because when I do my feedback videos for my clients, it's what I do. I teach them like why I'm doing what I'm doing. I explain to them and they have access to those videos so they could always see, hey, Vinny made a change here. I don't remember why. Let me go back and look and see why. So this app, it removes the guesswork for you. It gives you structure, gives you accountability, and it gives you legitimate evidence and data-based decision-making without needing the full-time coach, right? And once again, I have to be clear when I say this. It is not replacing coaching. Coaching is still the gold standard, but this can be that bridge, okay? This can be what gets people started, right? Being consistent, seeing progress. And a lot of people, that's really what they're missing is that little bit of structure, that little bit of seeing stuff. Hey, like if I stick with stuff for long enough, I can make progress. So yeah, let me invest in someone now because I know I could do it myself. Like I could do this with that guidance. Let me invest now. Let me pay for that 400 per month or 500 or 600 per month coach that I really, really trust, that knows their shit, and let them get me to where I need to be because now I trust myself that I can do it, right? So it's that bridge there. So if this hits home with any of you, if you've been going in circles, if you've been guessing your macros, if you're, I don't know, hopping between apps and just tracking food, but never having anything really coach you and you just feel like you run into the same shit year after year after year, then this app, Balanced Bodies Intelligence, is the right thing for you. All right, so you can just sign up. You go to landing page at app.balancedbodies.io. That's it, app, and I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the show notes for you guys, and you can just click on it, and you'll read more information about it. And there's visuals on there that you can look through and see all of the value that the app will give to you. Like I said, you're going to have that full coaching engine. You'll have that dashboard that tells you the most important things, the habit tracker, the food optimizer, the movement score, the ask your coach, all of it. It's all for you. If you're ready for that structure, if you're ready for that accountability, if you just need a system that can get you started, get you moving in the right direction, or you just don't feel like paying for a coach, or you just can't pay for a coach, but you still get a system that adapts with you, that listens to your body the way that you should be listening to your body, then you should definitely go sign up. All right. And if you have any questions before you do that, shoot me a DM. I answer every email, every message that gets sent my way. I answer every single one of them. I get on calls with people. I do Zoom. I'll tell you right now, I did it with 3 people already. I got on a Zoom call, shared my screen, and showed them what it looked like so they felt comfortable doing it. I don't mind doing this. I have some time on my hands to be able to do that. I work from home. Yes, I am taking care of a 14-month during the day because my wife is at work. She's at her practice, but she's napping. She's napping right now. So I got time to be able to walk you through it to see if it is right for you before you start signing up. But you could just try it out for 7 days because we have a free trial for 7 days. Free trial for 7 days. And if you don't like it, you just cancel. And that's it. I've had that happen. I mean, I could show people the metrics. A lot of people signed up and canceled. And then when I reached out why, and they were just like, I don't have the ability right now to log my food intake like that. I'm not ready. I'm like, okay, well, when you are ready, it's here for you. That's fine. So that's it for this one. It got a little bit long. We're still underneath the hour, but I appreciate you all listening if you made it this far. And I will catch you in the next episode with Dr. Erin. So on behalf of Balanced Bodies, we just want to say thank you for joining us on this episode of the Balanced Bodies Blueprint.
We are committed to bringing valuable content. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd greatly appreciate it if you can take a moment and like it and leave a 5-star review.
On Apple, just go to the show, scroll down to the bottom and rate it there. If you're on Spotify, go to the show's page, click the 3 dots, and you can rate it there as well.
And if you believe in the power of knowledge, share this episode on your social media to try and get the information out there to as many people as possible.
And as you navigate your own path towards better health, remember that Balanced Bodies is forever in your corner. See you all next week.
The podcast content may include discussions of medical topics and health-related information. However, the information provided should not be considered exhaustive or complete, and it should not be relied upon as a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment.